What's up, folks? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to talk to you guys for the first time about Future. So I've been meaning to talk about him, albums like Dirty Sprite 2, and then the What a Time to Be Alive that came out with Drake. But I kind of had mixed thoughts about it, and I was kind of contemplating whether or not, if I wanted to give it like a rash score, or if I wanted to wait a little bit and see if it grew on me. Now, obviously, waiting 5 years, that seems like more length than it probably should be, but considering Future has just kind of built his reputation and has actually become more massive as these years have progressed, it seemed like this project, more so than his album Honest, was kind of responsible for the Future that is, such who looms over so much of rap music now. That's kind of the situation. I mean, considering that this was free music, it was just a mixtape and it kind of based most of its platform just off of the two singles that came out. The Commas song wound up being on Dirty Sprite 2, but just the fact that it was as massive as it was and it found placement on an album later shows how good this mixtape kind of was. But I mean, it was good in some bases, but it's still, from mixtape standpoints, just like most folks, it's not trying to be like a perfect mixtape. It has the hits on there. It has more than three, more than four, but there's quite a bit of filler, and considering that there's only 14 songs, it just is like you. I mean, really, with mixtapes, like I've said numerous times, you just have to pick out your favorite 5 or 6 songs, and then that's it. But for what it is, it's an above average mixtape, but the quality of the overall project is not perfect. So if you're just rating it, if this were an album, it would probably get like a 3 or 4 out of 10. But considering it's a mixtape, it's still going to get around that score. But considering it's free, it's not like you shouldn't mess with this project. So it's kind of when I thought about that, for this to be one of my introductory things to Future, I figured, what would be the best thing to start with. I do actually own Dirty Sprite 2, but I don't listen to it terribly much. I mean, there's quite a bit of that project that is not up to par for me, but it made quite a bit of noise back in 2015, and it resulted in the Drake joint album, and Future was, one of the bigger rap artists for like the past 3 or 4 years. But so we'll talk about the singles just to kind of get into the meat of some of this project. So the first single that came out for the mixtape was the song Monster, the title track. And this is a pretty fierce song. I mean, it has a lot of, like, it feels rougher, and the approach to it's pretty ferocious. I think definitely from that, the way that it goes, it stands that song probably should have charted. Now, it's not going to be like Drake and chart high on the Billboard 100, but for rap turns, for someone who doesn't want pop rap, who's someone who wants something rougher, but something also trap music that's contemporary rap, I mean, this fits. This covers a lot of bases for a rap song. A lot of times you'll get the singing on there and it just feels like they sell out, but this is actually a single that you can't say is weak or just does not have like is just too soft or something like that. And that's kind of the good thing about Future. I mean, he croons, he's a singer, but it's not to the point of like Drake, the complaints that you would have about Drake. But then there was a second single called Fuck Up Some Commas, or the clean version of it, where it's just called Commas. This came out, this was released later on, meaning this mixtape had life 6 months later after it came out, and it wound up being put on Dirty Sprite 2. And obviously, if you find the streaming or the retail version of this mixtape, Fuck Up Some Commas is not on that monster, but it is on the mixtape, the free version. So it's another decent song. It feels ready for just a night out, something like that. Me trying to figure certain ways of listening to it. It's not quite as strong in my opinion as Monster, but it's another hit just to chalk up and kind of say, well, Future's 2 for 2 in terms of retail value of it. That's definitely the thing. I mean, obviously he could have simply just put this project out and sold it rather than working on Dirty Sprite 2. But I guess he figured I'll just give you something album worthy in addition to this. And I'm kind of glad that he did it. This is actually part one in a trilogy of mixtapes. So there was 56 Nights, and then like another one uh, that was called Beast Mode. So obviously, I'm not sure about those. It didn't seem to me that the other two part of that trilogy made as much noise, but I'm glad that there was, the attempt to kind of do it. So, but to talk about the rest of this project, there are quite a few songs like Wesley Presley, Mad Love, Tupac that feel like, it feels like like a future wannabe on some of these. They do not feel quite up to snuff. I somewhat blamed on the production, but a lot of these songs just do not stand out and lack like the punch of something that you would find on an album. The first couple songs that you hear, obviously, the converse of that is they feel like they could be on an album and not just as an album cut or filler, but actually like a single. Future kind of did a little bit of both. He gave you like some filler songs that couldn't be on an album, but he also made up for that by giving you some songs that could be singles for a normal album. So that's kind of the thing. He did that with Monster. He did that with After That with Lil Wayne, which is a great beat, great pace, great tempo to the song. Radical is another one, and there's another one I'm trying to think of, Fuck Up Some Commas. So all of those are obviously album cuts, and in some cases they could be singles if Future felt like being lazy. That's kind of the situation. So it's like, that's kind of why when you talk about this mixtape, even though it's not a perfect mixtape, it's still nothing to sneeze at. So that's impressive that that's kind of the way it is, because he could have just given you like the one or two singles and the rest of it just been bunk. But I'm kind of glad that that wasn't the case. So I guess now I'll talk to you about some of the songs out of the 14 songs. So if you're getting the mixtape rather than the retail version, if you're getting the mixtape that has 14 songs, out of those 14, I'd have to recommend to you 6, which is like I'm saying, mixtapes. We need to step up the idea behind putting out more excessive mixtapes, but still, Future was, well past rich when this came out. So, he had put out albums. So the 6 I recommend are Radical, Monster, Fuck Up Some Commas, After That, Hardly, which is kind of left field. That song is so low key and so pleasant, kind of. It felt weird considering the pace of the song being called Monster. It's different from a lot of the other songs, but Hardly, and then Codeine Crazy. Now, Codeine Crazy is the most popular stream song off this mixtape. And I was kind of on the fence about it. I was about to call it like an almost song, but I figured I would kind of like it just because, as an ode to days for folks out there who used to get fucked up, drunk, or whatever you did, it feels just like a trip, any sort of trip that you could have. It really is just an ode to that sort of thing. You listen to it and you kind of phase out. It's a 6-minute song. That was one of my that was going to be a complaint for me. It was just saying it's maybe a minute or 40 seconds too long. But I feel like the trip towards it just kind of, Future knows how to give you songs to get smashed to, and that's kind of the thing. That was his whole way of life for like the past 6 or 7 years. It's only been recent that he sobered up, but that's an obvious good one. So for old fans of Future out there who are still raising their glasses to stuff, that's a good one. But yeah, so 2 singles, which is good for a mixtape. I feel like if there had been any more than 2 singles off this mixtape, it probably would have been released at retail. Normally, when something's released for free, you're not going to get much more than 2 singles. So I can't say too much about the social score as far as like trying to. Future was, he had enough presence back then, so you probably knew about him. You picked out the ones you wanted. So, but yeah, I'm gonna give this mixtape a 4.5 out of 10, and 6 good songs. Obviously for me that's an easy 6 extra songs to listen to, but I mean, really, out of 14, it's kind of, I mean, that's the thing is this. So I don't know. I mean, it's tricky to review it, but I'm gonna stand by the score, and because I would have liked a couple extra songs on here to kind of listen to, but some of them, I mean, probably not even once in a blue moon would some of these songs be listened to. I mean, they're that far out of orbit from listenable music on those terms. That's kind of why it gets that score. I mean, obviously the songs that are good, those might as well be on like an album that you had to pay for, but the songs that are not, it's kind of a mixture. It's a dicey project, but I still do respect the project. So as far as that's concerned, that's what you get. So obviously, if you're in disagreement and you feel like this might as well be a classic, I mean, it depends upon how well you think of 6 songs out of 14 that being worthwhile. So that's kind of the situation. But you know, obviously the free thing is the biggest misnomer there. So yeah, 4.5 out of 10. It is a great mixtape, and it's one of the more recent good mixtapes, and especially for Future. I mean, he gets flack for just putting out. So many people have complaints about trap music and kind of say, it just isn't up to snuff. It's ruining rap music and recent terms, how all the crap that goes on with recent rap music. But this is actually a shining example of rap in late 2010s terms of what it could be when put under enough pressure. And that is, that's a good thing. I'm glad for that, just because I did not believe that all of current and recent rap is absolutely atrocious, but it really has to fight more to kind of prove that it's actually good. And that's the standpoint from it is, how many people are just, maybe it's nostalgia that does it, or maybe it's just pure criticism where you can actually see the lining to it. And I agree with that most of the time, but I'm starting to kind of lessen, my disdain for some of these trap artists. I mean, I don't find them as good as like some of the people from yesteryear, but it's not like they're complete bullshit. So